Greetings, citizens of the galaxy. Welcome to Swtor Gaming.
Your destiny lies with me.
Who we truly are is defined by our actions.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Alright guys, it's Swtor Gaming. I just finished another episode of The Mandalorian. Well, I wouldn't say episode, chapter 4, The Sanctuary. Now, I've been trying to do separate reviews, spoiler, non-spoiler, but for timing purposes, it just doesn't work out too well. So I rather go right into spoiler review. So if you haven't watched The Mandalorian yet because it's not available in your area or you haven't found a way to get it, online, I'd suggest you probably tune out right now, come back after you've been able to watch these reviews. So, I just want to say, just for my first thoughts before I really get into it, I expected an episode like this. It wasn't amazing. It had a good story in itself, and it was more about the location and the bond between, the child from the episode, I think it was episode 2 or episode 3, the child, basically the package that he was sent to get in episode 1, and the overarching story and their connection. That's basically most what it is. So I'm gonna give you guys a spoiler. I'm a spoiler warning, and if you haven't watched, you can tune out. All right. 3, 2, 1. Spoiler warning was given. Now you're at your own risk. So this episode, we actually finally get to see Gina Carano debut. So they land on this planet. He does a scan. It's a very rural planet. It looks kind of like almost like you would say in Asia. It looks like they have different patties. You could see their influences from from a samurai film, because this village is very rural Japan. It looks like rural Japan, and there'd be a rice patty, but instead of patties, they capture these little jumping fishes that they use to make all kinds of stuff out of. So the whole episode starts off before they are landing on this planet. It's that Baby Yoda's playing with different buttons on the ship. He says, "Don't touch anything," and it's still very curious about its surroundings and everything. So they land on the planet after they decide that maybe this is a good backwater to hide out on. He says he's going to go into town by himself, stay here, don't touch anything, and then he goes, "Oh, what the heck, just come with me." So you see Baby Yoda walking alongside him, and they go to town. The first thing they do, they go into the bar, get him a little bit of bone broth to drink up, and he sees Gina Carano's character. Looks like a tough customer. He's thinking it's probably one of the bounty hunters coming after him. Well, he's asking questions, then she disappears. He gives the barkeep or the server a tip. "Hey, watch this kid for a little bit," the Baby Yoda. He goes out the back or goes out the entrance and tries to follow footprints. Finds out she gets the drop on him. They fight until they got to a standstill, to a draw, and they said they decide to talk and find out about each other. We'll find out they're both on the run from the same group, bounty hunter group that the Mandalorian Din Djarin, I believe his name, belongs to. So they're both on the run from them. She basically says, "Hey, look, I was here first. You're gonna have to find some other place to live." And he goes back on his ship about to leave, and it's when a couple of villagers go, "Hey, we want to hire you." Because what I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned in the first place, is that before we see the Mandalorian arrive here, the village gets raided by a whole bunch of I forgot what this Star Wars alien race is, but the ones that are kind of have a dog face. So they just raided the place and killed some people, and so they pay him all the money. Although he may not want to take it, he needs money because he's no longer getting backed by the Bounty Hunters Association that Grief Karga led. So he's like, is that all you got? It's not enough. Then he's like, and then they guilt trip him and they go, well, now we just gotta walk all the way home through dangerous territory. And he's like, just get on the ship. And so they go back in the village. He finds Gina Carano's character, which is an Republic shock trooper, and goes, here, I'll give you some of this, need your help, we're gonna find out what's going on. And they track these raiders and they find an AT-AT, ATS, the chicken walker footprint. They find this chicken walker track. They go back and they tell him, Mandalorian's pretty blunt, you guys gotta get out of here. And she goes, she kind of sighs and says, hey, Mr. Sensitive, there's a better way of saying that. So she explains, but they don't want to go. The widow who's giving him the googly eyes, giving the Mandalorian the googly eyes, the lovey-dovey eyes, she says, we're not going. And then he's like, oh, God. Now he has to do it. And he's like, well, then while this is going on, you got Gina Carano's character, the Republic shock trooper, says, well, I've seen AT-ATs take down soldiers, real soldiers. You guys are nothing but farmers. There's nothing much you can do. And then here comes the next line. There's like a line for every single show. I mean, I have spoken. This is the way. Weapons are a part of my religion. And this is the line for this episode. She says, there's nothing you guys can do. And Din Djarin goes, unless we teach them how to fight. So the widow's daughter's playing with the baby Yoda. The rest of the villagers start, following the plan of Gina Carano's character and Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, and they start building, digging ditches and moats for the AT-AT walker, protect them from barricades. He starts teaching some of them how to shoot. He brings out all the weapons he had from his ship, as far as, a good locker full of blasters, rifles, etc., etc. And Gina Carano's teaching the other people how to, pretty much use sharp sticks, and they sharpen one edge and teaching them how to fight. And the plan is they're gonna blow up one of the encampments and have the rest of the raiders follow them and the chicken walker. So that's what they do. They pretty much go in, blow up, I guess, part of the encampment, and they bring the chicken walker coming through. Now they're hiding behind a barricade in the darkness, and the chicken walker's coming, stomping, and then their whole plan was to fall into a ditch, a muddy ditch, and it just stops before that, because of course nothing can ever be easy, right? So now they have this giant chicken walker with, of course, its cannons that can blast everything out of it. So it just starts blasting and barely grazes some of the villagers. So Gina Carano says, "Hey, let me see your cycler. Basically the weapon that's been vaporizing everybody." So Mandalorian gives it to Gina Carano's character. I honestly don't know what her name is, but I don't want to see former Rebel shock trooper like 100,000 times. Gina Carano's easy. Means shorten it to GC, but I don't want to get anybody lost. So Gina Carano's character takes the Mandalorian cycler, the sniper rifle with the two pitchforks at the end, goes all the way and starts baiting it into the ditch, and she's eventually successful. The thing falls down, and Mandalorian throws a grenade. And meanwhile, this is going on. You have, all the raiders coming with the dog faces, try to fight the villagers. The villagers are actually holding their own, so Gina Carano is probably a really, really good teacher. You know, not all of them are successful. Obviously, there's casualties, but you know, they pretty much drive them back. And after you blow up the walker, the rest of them run away. So it's then after all this is done, the place is peaceful again. The widow wants him to stay. They pretty much keep talking about like, hey, so like Gina Carano's character was like, what would happen if you remove your helmet? Now we find out a little bit more about the Mandalorian lore. If the helmet is removed in the presence of other people, it's kind of like you're kicked out of the clan. You can't put it back on. So she tries to remove his helmet. While we're seeing that, we're seeing somebody, one of the Kubas, I guess, that was on that planet, or maybe another one, is drawing down on the Mandalorian. It's got him in his sights, waiting for the helmet to be taken off so he can snipe him from the back. Then he sees Baby Yoda and tries to fire, and then all of a sudden you hear a blast, and we're all, oh, did the kid finally get it? Turns out Gina Carano's character, I guess, already saw him, already felt him, maybe whatever the reason, she hit him with a blast to the back, and messed up his whole shit. So, it wasn't a really action-filled episode, but we learned different things, you know. I mean, we learned more about the Mandalorian lore, like he can't take off his helmet in front of other people, or else, you know, he can't put it back on, which means he's not officially a Mandalorian, which is different than the Mandalorians we've seen before. Like, I've been telling some people, you know, like, what is Mandalorian lore, or what are the rules that the Mandalorians follow are dictated by the clan leader, right? So, I mean, we've seen it before, whether it's Vizsla in the Clone Wars, or whether it's I would say Boba Fett, Jango Fett, whether it's, they're technically not Mandalorians anymore, but you know, or like if you want to use the EU as an example, whoever was the leader of the clans are the ones that made, like, set the ideals for the clans. So that's why you would get very honorable Mandalorian clans, and then clans who would go on raids and pillages because they had different tenets they might focus on as far as the Mandalorian culture. These are the rules right now for that specific sect of Mandalorians. Now, we don't even know if that's the only clan left. There could be other clans in other places that have been hiding out since the fall of Mandalore. Chapters progress. I mean, we're in chapter 4, we got 4 more chapters, and that's it. And we could see, I mean, Mandalorian might appear in Rise of Skywalker. We might see a ship, because I mean, it takes a lot less time to put in a ship than to put Pedro Pascal in Rise of Skywalker and not say anything about it. So, I mean, something to think about. Then also the overarching story about Baby Yoda, or the Yoda baby, Yoda species baby. I mean, it's still being hunted, but for me, I don't think it's just him. I think now, like I've said in the last video, I think the Mandalorian's got a death mark on his head. I would imagine so if he, you know, did all that, because first, the Mandalorian was the one that was drawn on by the Kubas. Now you can say, well, he's much more dangerous target than the Baby Yoda, and that would probably be true, you know, at least for now. But I think he also earned himself a death mark, so they'll be hunting him wherever he goes. Now, will they find 1 bounty hunter, 2 bounty hunters, or 3? Yeah, we don't know. Another thing I want to touch in upon, and I want you guys to probably think about, we start seeing a little bit more of Baby Yoda's force powers. Now, it's very, very subtle, but it's very noticeable too if you pay attention. As the Kubas draws on him, he senses him. He's looking right at him through the scope. So from our perspective, we're like the Kubas drawing on Baby Yoda, and the Baby Yoda is looking at them, at us, if we're the Kubas from the perspective we have. So he's looking right at him, so that he senses him through the Force. You know, before sense that danger is about striking from what area. He is gifted, and the species is very strong in the Force. So we'll see how his powers develop. He is learning little by little. So we'll see what more he'll learn. Will he grow? Will he be like 2 feet taller next season or something? Will he come Mandalorian's kneecaps? We won't know. Will he even last that long? I mean, we do have 4 episodes. For those who are kind of maybe disappointed for this episode because it wasn't so much action, you have to keep in mind you can't continue building up and building up and building up and building up and just more crazy action because eventually there's a steep decline. Because eventually it gets all boring and then you have to do more amazing things or else it gets boring. You have to give it a little bit of lull. Just like years ago when I used to watch professional wrestling, you would have an amazing match and you couldn't follow an amazing match with an amazing match. You follow with a slower match. Give people the time to digest the match you had before. And then after that match, you put on another amazing match because you let it subside a little bit of the excitement and then you bring it up even higher. So I think the following episode will be packed with a lot more action. I could be wrong, and I'd rather them just tell the story that they want to tell, but it's very possible the following episode, next episode, will be full of action. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. This is Swtor Gaming signing off. May the force of your will further your destiny. Always.